In February of 2009, I had a dream about my daughter. In real life, I have 2 daughters, but in this dream, I have 1. We're in a small village plaza in the south of France, my daughter and my wife and I. I'm wearing a suit in the dream, despite the informality of the occasion, because in pretend France, this is what Frenchmen do. We're drinking good local wine, my wife and I, and my daughter is playing with a couple of local girls around a stone fountain. It's always a bit awkward in these places because the transition from terrace to road is strange. It's all just cobblestones. The great novelist Henry James had a line, "Write a dream, lose a reader." I think you'd find it okay, though, if the dream that I'm telling you or I'm writing about would inspire a character to action. A car enters the terrace, enters the plaza. It's going way too fast. The driver's looking at us in the plaza instead of the road. At the same time, one of the older girls sprints from the stone fountain to the mairie, the village hall. My daughter chases the girl. The car comes in and accelerates into my daughter. I don't run to her, I'm just there. I'm holding my daughter, there's wine on me, there's blood on me. I hear my wife, people are speaking in French, someone pulls me away, and that's it. I wake up. I wake up so moved by the dream, I make coffee. I try to wipe the feeling of the dream away by getting the newspaper, but the newspaper isn't there yet, it's too early. And I can't wipe the feeling of the dream away. I have the dream again and again from time to time for the next month, until one morning I decide to push the novel I've been writing away and think about this as a story. What is a story? I have to know what a story is because I write them for a living. If I want a good living instead of a ridiculous one, I have to be obsessed with story. Every professional instinct I have now is a story instinct. But what does this have to do with you, if you're not novelists or screenwriters or marketers? I will argue that if you don't understand story, you can't succeed. Everyone you can think of at this moment, everyone you've admired, every politician, king and queen, every artist, every industrialist, every religious leader understood that story is the most powerful and enduring means of communication human beings have ever invented. The medium changes, but this never changes. I went to university, to grad school, to study story. But when I got there, I realized that's not what we were going to do. I found in academia that story was too powerful. It was filled with bad politics and bias. So we mostly wrote self-indulgent nonsense that no one would ever want to read. Lately, I've been asking people like you, smart people, to tell me what a story is. And you'll say it's something you tell. It's funny, or it's sad. It's sad funny, it's entertaining. That might describe a good story, but it's not a story. Steven Spielberg knows a thing or two about the subject. He has said people have forgotten how to tell a story. Stories don't have a middle or an end anymore. They usually have a beginning that never stops beginning. My daughters are now 3 and 5. Thanks to me, they're developing lifelong anxiety problems about crossing roads. Neither of them like sleeping, and so they've manipulated my wife and I into reading 2 books to them before bed, and then telling them a story spontaneously with the lights out. If I'm lazy or tired, and I want to tell them some expository mess about how much I love them, one or both will interrupt me, and they'll say, "That isn't a story, Dad." To them, a story has a hero or heroes. There's a status quo, normal life, and then bam, story happens, an inciting incident. A fox runs into the house. Aliens land in the backyard. The Eiffel Tower speaks to them. They develop a conscious goal and an unconscious goal. The hero develops a huge, impossible, wonderful goal. A conscious desire to make a pet out of that fox. An unconscious desire to feel the way we feel when we set a wild thing free. I never taught classical story design to my children, yet they have an instinctive, sophisticated, critical understanding of what a story is and is not. I think most of us do when we're kids. We understand this. And then in graduate school or maybe in marketing boardrooms, we forget. We systematically unlearn it. Here are 3 examples of stories that may have moved you. The story of Jesus. The story of Ebenezer Scrooge. The story of the Grinch. Each of these stories is from the same religious and cultural tradition, but that's not why I'm using them together. In these stories, these characters have to make a gigantically difficult choice, a choice under pressure that changes them and changes us as we experience their stories. Story is about change. I have 2 liberal arts degrees. My informal training in neuroscience comes from reading novels, watching movies, watching television shows, plays, television commercials, and paying attention to the way I feel, and watching other people, paying attention to the way they feel. We sum up our profound neurochemical reaction to story with the word heart. We are moved by stories with our hearts. But how? How does that work? The novel I started writing set in the south of France. It's called The South of France. I decided I couldn't smell the place from here in Canada. I couldn't see it or taste it. I couldn't hear the cicadas that you hear in the south of France. So I decided we had to move to France. Of course, I couldn't tell my wife why I thought we should move to France. I had this dream, honey, about our daughter. She's superstitious. But still, I had to go. For more than a generation, Canadian novels and films have been defined by smell, taste, sight, what we hear, the poetic descriptions of these things. Our storytelling has become a decorative more than a narrative art form. If I want a good chance at winning the Giller Prize with the South of France, I had to begin with the family tragedy I outlined for you, and then tiptoe delicately over the husband and wife's emotional landscapes. I had to use figurative rather than declarative language. I had to end with a somewhat prettier version of the beginning, representing, with lovely metaphors, preferably blood oranges, the unknowableness of the human soul. This is by far the easiest way to write the novel. Canadian writers find portraiture comes naturally. But this failure, and I think it is a failure, is represented also in the boardroom by jargon and cliches, by words that don't mean anything anymore, by the majesty of presentation software. We see people succeed in meetings and we start to mimic them. We put people first. We maximize aspirational management buy-in. We build synergies with stakeholder groups. We ideate. We have aha moments. You all know I'm not speaking to you right now so much as I'm leveraging my core competencies. And we could all go on all day with this nonsense. But it's not just a problem with business language, it's a problem with language. If I hear one more person refer to a routine error as an epic fail, I'll stew quietly. That's how I respond to the world. Story Engine, the company I'm creating with my partner, of course we needed a logo and a website, so we went to see a graphic designer. And the designer told us that when his clients come in, generally, they want something awesome. They want the VW of VW. They want the Apple of Apple. They want Virgin written inside the little red circle. When the designer asks them who they are, where they've been, where they're going, the quality of their hopes and dreams and how they hope to achieve them, they try to change the subject. They don't understand the context for this question. They think the apple of Apple is the apple of Apple because it's the apple of Apple. Using jargon and cliches, the first easy thing that comes to mind, presentation software and beautiful graphic design to build our brands, is the same kind of failure, same kind of epic fail, as using a description of a blood orange in place of psychological complexity and narrative power in a novel or a film. This is David Goa. He's a philosopher and theologian, and I think he looks like one. He's the director of the Chester Ronning Center for the Study of Religion and Public Life. I was speaking to him a few months ago about a candidates debate he had gone to during a mayoral election. He listened to a man speak for 25 minutes about taxes mostly. And then during the Q&A, David put up his hand and said, "If I vote for you and you win, how will I and how will my city feel in 3 years? I understand you can move budget lines an inch in this direction, an inch in that direction. It doesn't interest me. I'm interested in who you are. What's your gospel? What's your good news? What's the nature of your transformation, and how are you selling it? What's your story?" The candidate was in front of a crowd. He looked at David and answered honestly. He said, "I haven't prepared for that." He had a great website, a lovely logo. He was putting people first. No story. We've just been through a federal election here in Canada. Michael Ignatieff, the Liberal leader, had come back after a brilliant international career to lead us, to be our prime minister. This is a great story. Why is he doing this? Why now? But instead of telling this story, the Liberal Party focused on admittedly noble things like a great website and open policy debates and town halls. He spoke unscripted with the media. The Conservative Party, understanding that the Liberal Party didn't tell Michael Ignatieff's story and he didn't tell his own, decided they could tell it for him. They saw the void. And they told the most devastating story any of us heard during the election campaign in 6 words. He didn't come back for you. This story destroyed Michael Ignatieff's political career and maybe destroyed the Liberal Party for a generation. If you're out in the marketplace in any way and you haven't built your story, the most you can hope to achieve is mediocrity. And if one of your competitors understands you haven't done this, they'll be happy, they'll be thrilled to do it for you. In the 1990s, when the oil sands were being developed, the Alberta government and the energy companies disputed climate science instead of telling the story of this gigantic, interesting, huge resource, the second largest deposit of oil on the planet. They used phrases like dinosaur farts. We were to dismiss all of that. In their laziness and their arrogance, they allowed someone else to tell the emotionally resonant story of the oil sands. And that's why outside these borders especially, they're known as dirty oil. The good news for all of us is it's never too late to tell our stories. The career of Sarah Palin, I think, is exquisite proof of that. But the longer you wait, the more difficult it becomes. This novel I'm writing, set in the south of France, I've decided not to make it into a piece of decorative art. Instead, I'm giving the husband and wife clear, distinct goals. The husband, after the tragedy, wants his family back. He wants his wife to love him again. He wants another daughter. He wants to move back home. He wants home. The wife wants order restored to the universe. She wants someone to be punished. She wants justice. She wants revenge. There's no easy way to tell this story. I'm not entitled to your readership. I can't order you to love my book. All I can do is write and rewrite and feel I've failed and decide to become a plumber. And then on my walk to work one morning, figure it all out. And then realize 4 months later that was a huge mistake, a stupid, stupid idea. And write some more and write until at the end, hopefully, I have something that will move you. I have to tell a true story about my pretend family in pretend France and pretend danger. I have to tell a lie so well it's truer than any fact. And this is precisely what you have to do, whether you're representing yourself or a product. You have to find your unique truth, that authentic thing that separates you from everyone else, yet at the same time, paradoxically, binds you to all of humanity. And once you find this truth, you have to broadcast it elegantly, using humor, sadness, maybe one blood orange. And in the process, you have to strip away all cliche, all dry facts. The first thought that comes to mind, get rid of it. No slogans. And you can't let pretty graphic design do the work for you, as marvelous as graphic design is. You have to find the higher spiritual truth of story. Everything you want at this moment an iPad 2, clean energy, an apartment in Manhattan, a BMW, a senior management position with Google, eternal life, an organic carrot, a startup that actually starts up. Everything you want. You don't want it, actually. A Todd Babiak novel. Wink! You don't want it because of its thing in itselfness. You want it because you believe its story. You have come to believe. I'll leave you with a final quote from a true speaking comedian named Fred Allen. He said this a long time ago. A human being is nothing but a story with a skin around it. So I want you, stories, to be good stories. And I want to thank you kindly for listening to me today. Thank you.